Yo tenía una pregunta sobre algunas plantas. Por ejemplo,
But Ericsson's colleague William Belay has found tantalizing clues that long ago the Siriono were cultivating a variety of important crops.
the Siriono language has some words for domesticated plants that appear to be derived from a language spoken 2,000 years ago, and that was associated with agricultural society. ¿Cómo se dice maíz? These words include the word for achiote, which is a red dye plant. It includes the word for cotton. They had these words not because they borrowed them from some other people, but because they have retained the cultivation of these plants through time.
Like the Siriono today, it seems the people who once lived here were settled farmers. They cultivated colorful dyes. They grew and span cotton for their clothes. They lived on carefully engineered mounds above the savanna's seasonal floodwaters and ate staple crops like maize. Unlike with Orellana in the central Amazon, there's a credible Spanish account of the area. Here Ericsson found more evidence of a sophisticated society.
The Solis de Holguin expedition came in 1617, and they describe entering these towns on causeways that were, they said they could ride 4 horses abreast, and as grand as the cities in Spain. And so they were remarkably impressed with these roads, their straightness, and the engineering.
The Spanish account is backed up by hard evidence on the ground. One of these roads is still there.
Doesn't look like much, but this is actually a prehistoric causeway that was constructed sometime in the past before the arrival of the Spanish, and it's still in use today. It's about 10, maybe 15 meters across and about 2 meters tall, very well preserved today. You can see the pathway going along it. And they would construct these, they took the soil out from one side or both sides of the causeway. And in doing so, they created a canal to interconnect these areas between the mountains.
Settlements, roads, canals. Just how big was this society on the Mojos Plains? It was time to take to the air. At last it was clear just what the mysterious straight lines were. They were the remains of a vast network of raised roads and canals running between the settlements.
So on this forest island of Boweries, you can see 50 to 100 causeways radiating out, connecting it to other forest islands.
And the strange striped patterns? These were also prehistoric earthworks, fields deliberately raised up a few feet above the savanna floor. Ericsson believes that this was how crops were grown, where agriculture is so difficult today. Raised fields would have stayed dry in the wet season. And in the dry season, they were surrounded by shallow canals, a source of year-round irrigation.
Raised fields are an ingenious way of cultivating areas that have generally poor soils and also very deep water during the rainy season.
Ericsson has found that the remains of the raised fields stretch for thousands of square kilometers. They could have sustained a huge population. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps even 1 million people, could have lived in this remote corner of the Amazon basin.
There are times when I've been flying over this landscape, and you look down and we can see the beginnings of some of the raised fields. We can fly for sometimes 15, 20 minutes, continuous engineered landscape, literally from horizon to horizon in some areas. It's truly spectacular, the scale and immensity of this transformation.
Finally, it was clear to Ericsson just what he was looking at. A society that had totally mastered its environment. A civilization of builders and engineers, as sophisticated as any in the ancient world.
When you look at the amount of labor that went into building these earthworks, the amount of earth moved, person-hours involved with altering rivers, courses, building these channels, connecting rivers, raising the roadways, it's on par with anything the Egyptians did in terms of their pyramids or cities.
These discoveries in the Bolivian Amazon raised an obvious question. If people here could overcome the limitations of their environment, perhaps Orellana's claims were not so outlandish after all. Perhaps there had been an El Dorado, all those hundreds of miles away, in the central Amazon. And sure enough, when scientists began to look more closely at the Indian tribes of the Amazon, they found evidence that didn't fit with the idea that these were people who had always been stuck in the Stone Age. A few years ago, anthropologist Mike Heckenberger came to work with the Kwikuru, a classic small Amazonian tribe of just 300 people. He assumed he would be dealing with a simple society, but what he found was altogether more puzzling.
There are several aspects of their social structure that are very, very similar to complex or hierarchical societies elsewhere. For instance, the existence of chiefly individuals who are fundamentally different at birth than non-chiefly individuals.
To Heckenberger's surprise, he found that this tiny tribe had a fully fledged aristocracy. The differences in status were expressed mainly through ritual.
Some of the flutes, for instance, are only used for the commemoration of chiefly individuals.
It seemed strange. Why should such a tiny group have such a complex hierarchy? But then Heckenberger found signs that the Kwikuru had once been very different. Near to the present-day village, he unearthed the remains of a prehistoric settlement.
How's it going, guys?
What was significant was its size.